Hi. Today we're going to be doing a practice that might be a little bit different than what you're used to. So this practice is going to be focusing on simple yoga postures, but we'll be doing those for longer periods of time than maybe what you've practiced before. So these long holds can be really, really helpful as an opportunity to really get into what yoga it was originally about, which is the mind. So originally yoga was this idea of unifying your thoughts and your attention and your actions all together into one very specific focal point. And now that focal point can change, but this idea of holding your thoughts there or watching as your thoughts drift to and from the practice is really, really vital to yoga. So when we do these longer holds, it gives us an opportunity to watch our minds a little bit more. Our mind might tell us, like, we're about to give up, right? We can't do it any longer, right? But the mind usually gives up before the brain actually needs to. So that's a big focus of what this practice is about. We'll be holding poses for anywhere between one, maybe all the way even up to 5 minutes. We probably won't go quite that far, but just to give you an idea of the different range that we might access today. If you haven't done a pelvic floor practice before, I would highly recommend doing that before you do this practice. So just going back, I've supplied a 30-minute video that focuses specifically on the muscles of the pelvic floor. So again, if you're not familiar with those, go ahead and stop this video now, go back, do the pelvic floor practice, get familiar with those muscles, and then you can return to this practice maybe at a later time. The reason why I say this is because the pelvic floor is really important for holding that stability. And so throughout the practice today, I'm going to be doing pelvic floor cues to hopefully help you to stay in these yoga postures a little bit longer. The ancient yoga saying says that if you anchor your mind in the root, which is the pelvic floor, the root will anchor your mind, right? So that's kind of what this entire practice is about. So again, if you aren't familiar with the pelvic floor, if I'm saying things that sound totally unfamiliar to you, just go check out the pelvic floor video. It's about 30 minutes long, and then come back to this practice. So if you're not already there, go ahead and just find a comfortable seat. You might relax the hands onto the knees, sit up tall in the spine. And focus on the breath. The breath and the pelvic floor will be the anchors that get you through your practice today. So as you breathe, bring the mind down into the muscles of the pelvis. And feel how those muscles change between inhale and exhale. As you breathe in, you might notice an opening or a spreading of those muscles deep in the pelvis. As you exhale, you might feel a gentle engagement. You might even sense the way the muscles contract and lift slightly upward on the exhale. And as you breathe out, you might actually accentuate that. So feel like you're lifting the vaginal muscles or the perineum in and up. And then as you inhale, you can release that. Maybe do it more times. Exhale, engage. Inhale and release. One more. And when that's complete, we'll just take a couple more deep breaths into the low belly, the pelvis. And when you're ready, we'll find our way to hands and knees. So you can float the eyes open. Make your way into a tabletop position. So we want wrists stacked beneath the shoulders, knees stacked beneath the hips. And staying tuned into these pelvic floor muscles, we'll just do a little bit of dynamic movement to warm us up for our practice. So on the exhale, maybe you can engage the pelvic floor, glutes, anus, rectum, vaginal muscles, or perineum. Lift in and up the urethra as you round the spine. And then as you inhale, release from the low belly and all the way back to the glutes. Exhale again, engage. Squeezing all of the muscles of the pelvic floor towards the tip of the cervix or towards the center of the pelvis. And then inhale and release. Let's do one more. Exhale, engage, really rooting down through the hands. And inhale to release as you lift the heart. On an exhale, just sink the hips back towards the heels for child's pose. Inhale, and we'll float back up to tabletop. Exhale, hips to heels for child's pose, maybe engaging the pelvic floor as you shift the weight back. And on the inhale, we'll come back up again. Exhale to release. And inhale to float up. Now we'll add a downward dog. So as you breathe out, again, maybe you engage pelvic floor muscles as you lengthen the hips up towards the sky. On an inhale, we'll drop back down to tabletop, let the knees float to the mat, and then exhale back to child's pose. Inhale to fours. Exhale to downward facing dog. Inhale to fours. And exhale back to child's pose. We'll take a couple deep breaths here. So you might like to keep the hands extending out in front of you. Or if you'd rather, you could bring the hands by your sides with the palms facing up. You can relax the forehead towards the floor. And if the forehead doesn't quite reach the floor, if you have a yoga block, you could place your forehead onto it. On an inhale, we'll just gently sit up. And when you get there, let's interlace the fingers together behind the back. And then we'll just roll the chest open, stretch it out as you reach the fingertips back towards the floor. Take a big breath. And then on the inhale, let's reach the arms out to the sides as we stand onto the knees. On an exhale, we'll release the forearms straight down to the mat. Keep the heart lifting forward. Inhale, reach out, reach up. Exhale, melt the forearms forward and down. Inhale, reach up, reach up. Exhale, forward and down. One more big breath in, come all the way to the top. And then we'll hold it here. So maybe you can press the hips forward, really activate the glutes. Then exhale, engage those pelvic floor muscles. As you breathe in, maybe you can stretch the thumbs back and really open up the belly. Take another deep breath. And then see if you can keep your arms parallel to your ears as you lower down with a nice flat back. Forehead will reach the mat, hands will lower down. Take a deep breath. On an inhale, let's float up to tabletop. And then as you breathe out, we'll curl the toes under, lengthen the hips to the sky, and find our downward facing dog. So you might give it just a little bit of movement. Maybe you pedal the feet or turn the head from side to side. And then when you're ready, settle in and get still. We'll start our first hold. So as you're breathing here, be mindful you're keeping even weight distribution through the hands. We're lengthening the shoulders away from the ears. Feel like you're pressing the tailbone up to the sky and the hips towards the back of your mat. As you breathe out, maybe you can engage the muscles of the pelvic floor. Anchor the mind into the root and breathe in and out from that space in the body. Try to be as still as possible. Try not to fidget or move. And just breathe. Imagine that you could rest here in this stillness. And as the mind starts to tell you stories, see if you can just breathe through those. Acknowledge that they're there and know that your body can do more than your mind tells it. Just a little longer. Keep breathing. And on an inhale, we'll gently lower the knees to the mat. And exhale back to child's pose. When you get there, you might like to stretch the wrists or roll them around. You could place the knuckles on the mat and kind of pull the forearms back to stretch the wrists out that way. And then just take a moment, soften the effort in the body. Relax the arms, the neck and shoulders. And on an inhale, let's find tabletop. And then we'll step our right foot forward and up to the top of the mat. If you have blocks nearby, you can use them by taking them to either side of the front foot. Otherwise, you can choose a different position with your hands. You could rest the hands and the fingertips on the floor, or you could bring your hands up onto your knee. But find some place to actually set your hands that you feel like you can sustain for about a minute. So I'm going to take my hands onto my blocks, and then you have a choice. You can keep your back knee down, or you can lift it up. So start to settle in, find the lunge that you want to hold, and then get still. Keep even weight distribution in the feet. Maybe exhale to engage in that pelvic floor by maybe just 20%. This is more of a psychic engagement than it is a physical one. Breathe deeply through the belly, the back. And see how still and how effortless you can be. Empty the mind of stories and thoughts. Rest it in the stillness of the body and the flow of the breath. If you have your back knee up, you can gently lower it down to the mat. Then we'll slide our right foot back. Maybe pause here for a moment. And then we'll reach our left foot up. Start to settle in. Get ready for this hold on the other side. So when you found that space, if you had the back knee high the first time, we'll lift it up again for the second. Maybe you need to adjust your blocks or the position of your hands. Find that place where you can settle in. Even weight distribution in the feet. Steadiness in the body. Focus on the breath. Maybe you can anchor your mind in the pelvic floor. Hold the thoughts still. Every movement in the body reflects a movement in the mind. As the body gets still, the mind gets still, and as the mind gets still, so does the body. Practice resting in that stillness. Being steady and effortless simultaneously. You don't have to believe the stories that the mind tells you. When you're ready, we'll lower that back knee. Slide that left foot back. Take a moment, breathe. Maybe you'd like to release into a child's pose again. And if you're using blocks, you can just move them off to the sides for now. Take some deep breaths into the belly, into the back. On an inhale, we'll float back up to tabletop. Really anchor down through the hands, and as you breathe out, we'll find our downward facing dog again. Take a moment to settle in. Find that place where you can be still, steady, maybe even effortless. Maybe you'd even like to close the eyes. Drop the mind down into the muscles of the pelvic floor and anchor your attention in that space. Just a little longer. And when you're ready, we'll release back to hands and knees. Take a deep breath. When you're ready, we'll come into some variation of side plank. So side plank, there's a few different ways that you can do this, right? But either way, you want the supporting hand to be stacked roughly beneath your shoulder. And then I'm going to choose to keep my knee down today. So ideally, you probably want the knee in line, the foot in line with the arch of your back foot. And then you can bring your top hand onto the back and rest here. If you're feeling strong today, you could choose to come into a full side plank, stacking the feet on top of each other. But just settle in, get still. You have the option of extending the arm. As you exhale, maybe you can engage in the pelvic floor. Maybe you can breathe deeply through the body. Practice being still and steady. Even as the mind wavers and the body begins to shake. When you're ready, we'll release. Maybe rest back onto the heels for a moment. You could move the wrists around again. Stretch them out in front of you. Just take a moment to pause and feel the two sides of the body. And when you feel ready, we'll start to prepare for the other side. So again, if you're choosing to keep the knee down, you might try and have the shin in line so the toes are pointing towards the arch of the back foot. Relax down onto the hand. Bring the opposite hand up, and you could choose to just rest here. Or maybe you extend that top arm. If you're feeling strong today, you could choose to stack the feet on top of each other, come into a fuller version of side plank, but it's up to you. Try and choose the same variation that you chose on the first side. Settle in and get still there. Shaking is okay. But try and keep the mind still, keep the body steady. Let the breath and the pelvic floor be your anchor. When you're ready, we'll release. Find child's pose again. Take one more deep breath. When you're ready, we'll rest the forearms down onto the mat. Hands are flat, elbows are down. We'll come up kind of like a tabletop, but we're down on the forearms instead. And then we'll come back into a modified version of downward facing dog. Try and press the weight evenly through the hands. Press the heart back towards the thighs and lift the hips up towards the sky. Settle in here, breathe deeply. See if you can drop in and find that still, steady center. And just breathe. Breathe into the tired spaces of the body. Anchor the mind into the pelvic floor. And when you're ready, we'll release. Breathe into the back, through the arms. When you're ready, we'll just sit back onto the heels again. Take another moment to soften the shoulders, the arms, the back. And from here, maybe you'll bring palms together at the heart. Stand up onto the knees. And then see if you can make your way to standing without using the hands. As we breathe in, let's just reach the arms straight up. And as you breathe out, we'll fold forward over the legs. On an inhale, we'll roll the shoulders back to lift the heart, come halfway up. And on the exhale, we'll melt forward and fold again. Take one more big breath here. And as we inhale, we'll reach the arms out and up. And then from here, let's sink into a chair pose. So we'll exhale, bend the elbows, bend the knees. Really relax the shoulders down. Anchor the tailbone towards the floor. Imagine that you're stacking the knees on top of the ankles, and then see if you can sit just a little lower. When you feel like you've got it, you can choose what you want to do with your hands. You might decide to bring them together, palms at the heart. Maybe you want to reach them straight up for a more traditional chair pose. But settle in, sink in. Exhale, engage the muscles of the pelvic floor. Breathe deeply. Get steady, get still. Notice the stories your mind tells you as they come up. See if you can move through those stories. Just a little longer. Breathe into the fire that you might feel. Inhale, come up. And exhale to release. Take a moment, pause, breathe. Feel the breath in the body. Nourish the tired spaces. When you're ready, let's come into a warrior two. So I'm bringing my left foot forward, my right foot back. The arch of my back foot is in line with the heel of my front foot. If you have a block nearby and you want to use it for the second part of this hold, go ahead and prep it by just placing it on the pinky toe edge of the foot. So we'll start this out in warrior two, and then we'll make our way into a side warrior. So if you don't have a block, you can just rest the elbow onto the knee. Or if you're feeling, a little looser today, you might decide to bring the fingertips to the floor, but just remember, we're going to be holding it there for a moment. So take a second, figure out where you want to hold that. And then when you're ready, you can meet me up in warrior two. Bring the mind into the feet. Find even weight distribution through those feet. We'll settle in and breathe. Without moving the feet, maybe you feel like you're moving them towards each other. And engage those pelvic floor muscles. Maybe you can lengthen up through the spine. Get tall and keep the shoulders soft. Stay still. Hold the mind and the body steady. Focus on the breath. And as the stories in the mind start to arise, just redirect the focus. As you breathe out, we'll release the hand or the elbow down either to the block or to your knee. We'll reach the top arm up to the sky. Or if you'd rather, you could place the hand on the hip or even reach the arm straight overhead. But take a moment, decide where you'd like to be. Settle in and get steady. Find a place to fix your gaze, or maybe even close the eyes. As you breathe in, maybe you can lengthen the heart and the collarbones forward. As you breathe out, maybe you can anchor the mind into the pelvis. Get steady, still. Breathe deeply. When you're ready, we'll reach that front arm forward and find our way back up. Just relax the hands. Pause for a moment. Use the exhale to release tension from the shoulders, the neck. And then we'll make our way to the other side. So if you're using a block, you can just take it with you, switch the angles of the feet. Block comes to the pinky toe edge of the foot. Front knee bends to stack on top of the ankle. And then we'll inhale and float the arms up. Maybe you bring the gaze forward over the fingertips. Settle in and get steady and still. Keep the arms, the shoulders, even the fingertips soft and relaxed, but still activated, not lazy. Anchor down, even out the weight through the feet. And then keeping the feet as they are, maybe you imagine that you're drawing them towards each other. And as you breathe out, engage the pelvic floor. Let your steadiness and your stability come from that center. Focus the mind on the breath. When you're ready, you can either release the elbow to the knee, or you could bring the hand to the block if you're using one, maybe down to the floor. And then again, you might keep the fingertips pointing straight up. You might reach them overhead for more of a side stretch. Or maybe you just rest the hand on the hip. Try and choose whatever variation you held on the first side. Find that focal point. Settle in and get steady again. Anchor in and be still. And see if you can cultivate a sense of effortlessness as you hold this pose, which I know it can be challenging, but it's okay. Just notice the stories and the thoughts that arise in the mind and practice moving through them. When you move through these kinds of stories or thoughts on the yoga mat, it helps to create new neural pathways. It retrains the brain to start to do that even when you're not on the mat. When you face a challenge in life, at work or at home, creating these neural pathways here and now can carry over to those moments. On an inhale, we'll float the front arm up. And then let's just bring the hands to the hips. Turn the feet parallel and take a big breath up through the soles of the feet to the crown of the head. As you breathe out, just mount down. Find a forward fold. Relax the back of the neck. Maybe turn the head from side to side. Start to shift the weight forward and back and eventually settle into even weight distribution through the feet. And breathe here. When you're ready, we'll turn the heels in, turn the toes out. Slowly sink the hips down. Take a deep breath. On an inhale, we'll come all the way up. And on the exhale, we'll release. From here, let's turn our left toes out. Arch of the back foot is again in line with the heel of the front foot. We'll bring the hands to the hips. On an inhale, we'll reach the fingertips forward and drop them down to the shin or maybe to a block. We'll roll our top shoulder open and float the fingertips to the sky, finding triangle pose. Breathe deeply. When you're ready, we'll release the hand to the hip, look down, scoop that front arm back to standing, and then we'll just switch sides. Really reach the front fingertips out over the toes and release them down. Roll that top shoulder open, and as you're ready, extend the arm. Settle in again, get still and steady. Hold your awareness on the breath or anchor the mind into the pelvic floor. Notice thoughts as they arise, but try not to engage with them. Just be aware. Say, oh, that's interesting. And return back to the breath. Try not to make the thoughts mean anything at all. Just let them come up and let them fall away. Just a little bit longer. Deep breaths in and full breaths out. When you're ready, we'll release the hand to the hip and scoop that front arm up to standing. We'll release the hand, step the feet together. Take a big breath in and breathe out as you melt forward and fold. And then inhale, we'll gently come back up. Close the eyes and notice, what does it feel like to you right now? When you're ready, we'll come into our next set of holds. So we'll come into pigeon pose. So if you have blocks nearby, you might like to have them up near the top of the mat where you're going to set up. I'm actually going to move mine out of the way so you can see what's happening. Right. And you can come into pigeon pose a few different ways. My favorite is from downward dog, because then from here I can just bring the right foot forward and sink down into the hips. So the thing to be mindful of here is that we're keeping our front foot flexed. We also want to keep even weight distribution through the hips so we're not collapsing over into this bent leg side. We want to keep the hips up and keep the weight pressing straight down through the center of the pelvis. Now, a lot of times you might hear the cue for this as keeping the shin parallel to the top of the mat. And it's okay if you want to try that, but it's not the most important thing going on here. So if you're not getting that perfect parallel alignment, don't worry about it. Just do the best that you can. Okay? If you have blocks, they can be nice because you can kind of use them to decide how much of your piriformis you want to feel. So you can press the hands into the blocks to kind of lift yourself up. And you can release that pressure on the blocks to sink the hips down. From here, you could start to lower down onto your forearms. Or maybe even rest the forehead onto the floor or towards a block. If you're seeing me demonstrate this and for whatever reason your knees are not going to allow this to happen, you could choose instead to come onto your back. You'd cross the ankle over the thigh and hug the knee into the chest. So if you'd rather come here today, you could choose to do that. But if you're not already there, go ahead, settle into your pigeon pose. And breathe. Get still, get steady. Maybe you use the exhale to engage the pelvic floor. As you feel ready, you might come forward. Rest the forehead down. Close the eyes and breathe into the spaces that are pulling at your awareness. Use the inhale to nourish those spaces. Use the exhale to relax just a little more. As you're ready, you can start to come up. And then we'll make our way to our other side. However you want to get there, it's fine. I like to press back into a downward dog. Pause there for a moment. And then when you're ready, we'll reach the opposite foot forward. And start to settle in for the other side. Again, you could use the blocks to decide how much weight you want to allow to come towards the floor. But make sure that weight is coming down through the center of the pelvis so you're not shifting the weight over into the bent leg side. And we're keeping our front foot flexed as we sink a little deeper into this. Once you've found the right positioning for your legs, you might decide that you want to walk the hands forward, maybe drop down, lowering the head to the ground, to the forearms, or maybe to a block. And then just settle in and breathe deeply. If you notice the mind wandering, return it to the breath, the body. And imagine that you could let everything else go. Surrender fully to the moment that you find yourself in, with grace and resilience. When you're ready, we'll start to come up. And then this time, we'll shift our weight over into that bent leg side. Come to a seat and extend the back leg out in front of you. On an inhale, we'll sit up tall. And on an exhale, we'll melt forward and fold. On an inhale, we'll float back up. And on an exhale, we'll melt forward and fold again. One more. Big breath in. Full breath out. Settle in and find that space that you want to rest and breathe. It doesn't have to be the fullest expression of a forward fold that you're able to find. But find the most comfortable, the stillest expression. And settle in there. Maybe you close the eyes, or maybe you fix the gaze on the tips of the toes, or someplace beyond the toes and into the room in front of you. But be mindful that you're not tilting the chin up, taking tension to the back of the neck. You want the crown of the head extending away from the tailbone to find length and space there. With each inhale, you might imagine you're breathing up the spine from the tailbone and through the crown of the head. As you breathe out, maybe you breathe down from crown and back to tailbone. On an inhale, we'll gently sit up. When you're ready, we'll make our way to the other side. Inhale to float the arms up, and as you exhale, breathe out and fold. Inhale, float up. Exhale and fold again. One more. Big breath in. Full breath out. Find that space where you can rest in stillness. And breathe deeply. Maybe you breathe up from tailbone to crown. Breathe down from crown to tailbone. On an inhale, we'll come up. And go ahead and come onto your back. Maybe hug the knees in towards the chest. Give them a little squeeze. And we'll place the feet flat on the mat, about hip distance apart. And let's just inhale and press up into a bridge pose. Take some deep breaths here. Maybe you can lift the hips just a little higher. And as you breathe out, melt them down. Stretch the legs out and settle in for your Shavasana. The toes fall out to the sides. The backs of the hands rest on the floor. Focus on the breath. The way it flows in and out of the belly. And simply imagine that you could anchor the awareness into that movement. Resting the mind in the sensation of the breath as it flows in and out. Go ahead and take some deeper, fuller breaths. And as you feel ready, you can start to move your way up to a seat. Settle in where you can be comfortable and still. Focus the mind on the breath. And whenever the mind moves from that focus, just simply notice and then redirect it back. Allow yourself to rest in this space where there's nothing to do and no one to be. Let the mind just dissolve into the flow of breath in the body. You can stay here for as long as you'd like. Thank you for practicing today. Namaste.